And here we go. 5, 4,
3, 2, 1.
White takes the heat.
Red takes the heat.
Take the heat!
Take the Heat, a podcast powered by LiveHeats, the all-in-one platform for modern sports competition. Try it now at LiveHeats.com. Welcome to Take the Heat. I'm your host, Mitchell Salazar. This podcast is unlike any other. You're going to get tips and tricks to apply to your heats across all action sports. We'll be talking to specialists in the field, experts, and athletes. They'll share their secrets to success to help you take your next heat. Each episode will also take questions from competitors, young and old. Make sure you follow us online and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a thing. On today's episode, we're stoked to bring you super coach Glenn Micro Hall. What Micro has to say will not only inspire you as an athlete, but also in your everyday life. He reveals the tools that help make Matt Wilkinson and Tyler Wright from zero to hero, and he answers 2 special questions from Groms that you'll love.
Take the heat!
All right, everybody, welcome to Take the Heat. I'm your host, Mitchell Salazar, and today's guest is none other than Glenn Micro Hall. Glenn, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Glenn, first of all, great surfer, great coach. How did you initially get into the sport of surfing?
It's my parents grew up in the bush type thing, and not in the bush, but just away from the ocean. So they weren't diehard surfers at all. My dad was he's a mad fisherman in the trout streams down here and played football, and we moved to the beach I think they moved to the beach right before I was born, and then I grew up playing soccer and tennis and golf and football, and we lived near a beach called Umina Beach. It was small and it's an easy little soft wave. So I started to go down. I bodyboarded till I was about 10, I think, and then got into riding a little cool light foamy board for a few years. And at the time I was riding my soccer and tennis, and then got to the point where I had to kind of start dropping the sports off, and golf was first to go, and then I was riding the soccer and tennis, and then started to surf more and more and wanted to do the little local comps, and so then it became all conflicting on the weekends, and I dropped soccer off, which was hard. I really enjoyed it, and it was all like a big team sport with the mates, and then I was left with tennis and surfing, and I remember my mum and dad sat down and were like, all right, like every weekend there's a surf comp or a tennis comp, what do you want to do? And my mum and dad say now that they were just like thinking, please say surfing, so I don't have to go to these tennis courts around the world. And they just wanted to go to the beach. They started loving the beach. So, yeah, they were pretty happy when I chose just to do surf comps. And from there, I met obviously good friends, like started doing events with Ace, and just loved surfing from then on.
Glenn, I want to get your insight on what it's like to not only be a successful professional surfer, but obviously now a successful coach yourself. You've helped Tyler Wright win back-to-back world championships in 2016 and 2017. And now you have Brisa Hennessy finishing number 5 in the world at the end of 2022. What's it been like for you so far in the years that you have coached?
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild transition from having my own surf career and then stepping into coaching and trying to find the balance of when you see it as a surfer and when you see it as a coach. And yeah, it's just a whole lot of learning from my end. It's I spent my whole years as a surfer learning myself and getting advice along the way and taking the pieces of gold I could out of everyone that I met along the way, and then trying to flip that and then find what suits the people that I work with. So yeah, it's just been such a cool experience to learn. To be honest, it's learning when you've got one hat on as a surfer, and then trying to learn as a coach and learning how to deliver the right message, and it's been really fun.
Do you feel like coaching actually improved your own surfing?
100% for sure. I definitely, as an athlete or as a surfer, you see it one way, and you're always trying to learn and get better, but you kind of have one lens that you look through almost, and as you sit back as a coach, you see things so differently. And then now that I'm a coach, I obviously look at other sports even differently. Like I see what the coach does and the way they approach things, and you learn so much more than you ever thought you could have as a surfer. You're kind of a bit one track minded, and obviously that's pretty generally speaking because you're trying to be open to learn these different things, but you've just got one lens that you look through, and you just kind of you're a bit rushed to get to the end goal. But as a coach, you realise there's so much more out there to take on, and so many different ways to see things, and there's a lot to learn and a lot more as a coach.
It's interesting that you say that because your trajectory is quite impressive. I mean, you started competing early on in the QS in the mid-2000s, but your best year successfully in terms of your career was 2012. 2 QS wins, you made the final at the Nike Lowers Pro, you lost to Gabe right there, but I mean, competing at Lowers and making the final there, that's no slouch. What can you tell me about 2012 and why it was such a dominant year for you?
Yeah, I think I often reflect on that and try and understand what the change was in that year to have it all click like it did. And I think what I often think about is just that little element of letting go. And I'd been on the QS for 50 years trying to make it, and I was always close and didn't quite get there. And I was always pretty purpose driven in the sense of I really enjoyed the process, and I got to the end of each year and I was like, I loved every bit of it, even if I missed out by one spot and didn't quite reach the goal of qualifying, and I questioned, all right, am I doing it again? And then, I'd answer to myself of I enjoyed every bit of it, and I was pretty close, so let's do it again and have another go and enjoy the journey. I wasn't too fixated on qualifying, but then the longer it went, obviously it slowly just went further towards, all right, and you've been around the world enough to all these events and you go in the same spots, and there was an element of getting closer to wanting to just qualify, just to tick it off. And then I had a baby that year, and there was just something about letting it go and traveling the world with my wife and doing some events with my baby, and just kind of just seeing the world for going to these places, and I without a doubt gave it my all for the right reasons of all right, I'm spending our money to be here, and I always was one to give 100%, but there was something about giving it 100% to the journey and appreciating why I was there and appreciating the whole experience, and the result focus wasn't as extreme. And I found that I kind of had that little element of letting go and letting it happen and enjoy the year regardless. And like I said, I was always that way, but I feel like there was a little bit more of that in me. And then just obviously, I guess once you find a groove and you kind of start winning a bit more, it kind of naturally evolves and you kind of find your spot, and that year kind of all just fell into place.
By taking a step back and doing just as you did, it almost seems like it was an eye-opening experience for you after doing it for so many years already. And then you actually had success in 2012, and then you eventually qualified for the championship tour. And that same year in 2013, you faced multiple adversities too. You want to talk us a little bit about 2013 and kind of the rude awakening to the CT?
Yeah, it was a strange old surf journey that I've had, but I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest. I did the QS for all those years, and then had the year where it all kind of came together and I made it. And then that next year, when I'm on the tour for the first time, and I was can't remember what age I was, but I was getting on, but I was so happy to be there and give it a crack, and I put everything into it. I trained and I was well aware that the Johns and Gabriels are way better than I am. So I was I was a realist in my ability level, but I was also a realist in my level of competitive skills and the amount of effort I put into being the best competitor I could be. So I was never paddling out against those guys feeling like, I had no chance. I just went out there using my skills that I had as best as I could. And I was well aware that they could do some crazy things that I couldn't do, but I enjoyed the challenge of trying to figure out how to beat them in my way. So, I entered that year, first year on tour, and I was fully ready to give it a good swing. And, fourth event in, I had a bit of a whoopsie in Fiji, and, I landed on the reef and had an injury. So I kind of put the brakes on the year completely. I had to take the rest of the year off and was flown out of Fiji on a chopper and then a medevac plane back to Australia, and it was kind of a bit of a like, and everything was going so well, especially Fiji where it happened. It's like the pinnacle of fun of being on the tour. It's like you're all there, you're all staying on this island. There's nothing else but all the crew that you want to be with, and in perfect waves, fun afternoons with the boys, and it was like, I feel like you've reached the pinnacle of fun of being on the tour, and then it kind of came crashing down. But to be honest, I've had a friend who's had a surfing injury and he's in a wheelchair. So for me, I was seriously lying there on the bed that day when it happened, and I still felt fortunate that I was all right to walk, and I wasn't walking real fast, but I could feel my legs, and I was getting around. So I was kind of a bit, and realistically, I wasn't too bad.
Well, first of all, I mean, that's an amazing story. And the fact that you were able to recover from that and still compete on and off the CT a couple of years after that, it's impressive. I want to go back and circle really on the topic of self-belief. And I think both you and I kind of share a correlation in terms of sizing within surfing. I'm a much bigger person. I wasn't as heavy when I was actually doing the QS, but I've always been very tall. And in some ways, it's been detrimental to me. And for your stature, you're much shorter than a lot of people that actually qualify for the championship tour. I want to say 5'9", 5'10", probably the average height. Did you ever feel like that was something detrimental to you?
Yeah, I definitely. We are fortunate to be in a sport that you can come in all shapes and sizes and get it done. And I do think, without a doubt, being a bigger person, there's certain conditions that, like for someone like myself, you are up against it. And in big open face Bells Beach, you just look like a small person on a big wave, and it's hard to get scored. But I try to never view it that way. I try to view it in the sense of there's conditions where it's in my favour as well. So on the world tour, obviously most conditions are bigger rather than smaller. But I've always kind of noticed the guys over the years. Like Kelly Slater's actually a pretty small dude. So I feel like you kind of got to find your way to surf as big as you can and in power. And I think, you look at even girls like Laura Anova, she's so small and so skinny, and she's incredible. Like, she can take on crazy waves, and she can harness some amount of power that's incredible. So it's just definitely, you can try and look at it that way. And I've often had heaps of people kind of try and point out how it's a disadvantage, and you can choose to look at it that way, or you can choose to look at it the other way, and find your moments where it's in your favour, and find your ways to figure it out and do the best with what you got. I can't change my height, so.
Hey, you can change the outcome of things, though, and it seems like you obviously took a very positive route when it came to that kind of thing. Now I think it's time to get down to the nitty and gritty part of this, and coaching has been a very favorable thing for you. You're one of the great minds behind the sport of surfing. How did you begin to work with the likes of Tyler Wright and Matt Wilkinson?
It's I guess the back end of my surf career, those I had the injury, then I had the next year I got a few wild cards into events, and then I had the following year on the tour for the whole year. So towards the back end, I was traveling with Wilco, and then I was doing some work with him and work with Sage Erickson and then Laura Anova, and that was kind of the start of my world tour coaching. But all the way back to when I was on the QS, I was doing some coaching with some juniors, and I found that love for just helping people. So I feel like it all morphed together with the local Groms who I was helping, and they weren't world beaters, and they weren't striving to be on the world tour. They just enjoyed surfing. Their parents were stoked to have me give them some advice and be around someone that was kind of, positively influential on what they were doing in their teenage years. And then when I got to the world tour, I obviously enjoyed competing from the mind more so than just kind of going out there and see what happens. And I was, really thinking about strategy and how to beat someone who's a lot better than I was. So I kind of came from that. And then when you put the two together, I just had a real passion for coaching and helping Wilco. He kind of slowly got his life in order. And then as I and signed off from surfing myself. Wilco, he was happy to bring me on tour the next year and work with him. And then I kind of somehow a little team came together, and it was going to be Owen that year too, but he had his injury. So then it was Ace, and then Wilco, and then Ace jumped in for a little bit, and then when I think Sage pulled out, and then Tyler rang me and said, she goes, I heard you're kind of doing this thing full time now, and I heard there's a spot in the squad, and and you have to have me join in. So I jumped in the car and drove down the south coast and met her for the day, and from there we kind of went for 5 years or so together, and it was so I got lucky, I guess, in the sense of the right people giving me the right opportunity at the right time of my career. But I guess in saying that, and it's the way I competed was something that people wanted to understand how I got past some of those people who did have a much higher level of skill than I did, and it was just intriguing to them, and then just building that relationship became something that was really special.
What's most impressive to me is the fact that you were still competing on the CT and you're helping coach two people, one male and one female at the same time. That to me is unprecedented, and I still think that to this day most people will probably say it's crazy too. Yeah. Why did you start taking that on in 2015?
Yeah, I guess I had the inkling of it's just what I enjoyed. Like I would sit and watch and break down heats all day long if I could. I actually love it. So, and Wilco was a really close friend who drove me mad watching him not do as good as he could have, all those years. So I actually wrote coaching theories and ideas for him 4 years before I even was nearly working with him. So just he's a good mate, and and he'd get to the end of every year and everyone was just scratching their head going, oh, I'd love to see him pull his shit together and and get it going as much as he could. So it was something that I was passionate about, helping a friend, but also I felt like I did have something to offer from a real coaching role. So it was that was how it worked with Wilco. I was still on tour, so I was more so just I'll do my thing, and Wilco, let's do it together and train a little bit and eat a little bit healthier and surf a little bit more and order your boards before the event, not after it, and just be slightly more organised and just get to the end of the year and you've put in a better preparation that you would have in the past. And it was an easy transition. And then he kind of felt the results the year we worked together when I was on tour, and then the following year was an easy kind of continuation from there.
Do you remember any of those theories like straight off of your head?
I just remember at the end of every year, Wilco had obviously partied a bit too much and was slightly overweight and slightly unorganised. It was like all the basic things that he knew, everyone else knew, and everyone, like, he's a legend, so everyone loved him. And like Ace and I are good friends with him, and you'd almost have the end of year beer with him and go, come on, Wilco, next year, like let's get it together and give yourself a chance of doing well, because he'd just hold on tour each year, and everyone was stoked that he held on, but it was scary last couple of events. So as mates, we'd give him the talk, and you try and give him. It was more so give him the talk of like and trying to get him to do it, and he knew it. He's such a clever dude. He knew what was happening. It wasn't rocket science, but my theory was to like sit down and give him all the elements of being a professional athlete and rate himself out of 100 and go, let's just pick a few of these and just try and crank them up a little bit. And not, I think he was overwhelmed at the thought of like, all right, if I've got to train, I've got to be Mick Fanning, and that's not him. And if I've got to eat healthy, I've got to be go from eating Big Macs to being a vegan. And then he kind of saw it as too overwhelming to go all in and be someone that wasn't him. So my approach was just doing a little bit in a bunch of areas that shouldn't lead to a lot of improvement. And we sat, and I wrote this whole thing on a plane one day going to Goldie, and it had nothing to do with, I wasn't going to Goldie to see him. I was just on a flight, and I was thinking about Wilco, and then I had it, and then I pulled that out, and we kind of went through and just broke down all the areas that he saw, so then he could see him as easy changes and easy wins. So he picked out, and he just trained a little bit more and ate a little bit healthier, and ordered his boards early enough that he'd get them before the next event. It was just all simple things, but things that he could go, all right, I can commit to that, and it's not overwhelming. And obviously, once he kind of sunk his teeth into a bit, he kind of leaned in a bit more and kind of did more than he ever expected he would have in his organisation and preparation, and then obviously led to some good results.
Have you ever thought of commercializing something like that for the average everyday surfer?
I've actually done a similar theory with a bunch of corporate people, and yeah, it's to be honest, it's not rocket science. It's super simple. It's just, you know, it's the same when I look at myself of like, if someone says you got to make these changes, if it feels too big and daunting, you somehow kind of just lean away. But if it's small, you know, in baby steps, you're like, all right, I'll give it a go, and then find your way through it. And I think that's what it was for Wilco. And his first training session, he was wearing his tracksuit and his cowboy hat, and he kind of didn't have to go into Lycra and straight into it and being someone that doesn't fit him. So he could find his own version of just kind of taking a step, and we'll kind of find our way along the way. And getting it started was the biggest challenge. So yeah, I'm the same. Like, making change is hard, but if you make the first step as easy as it can be, then from there you can get it rolling and get the ball moving, and then you kind of, you know, you almost find that addiction to wanting to do it rather than finding it scary to do.
It's a good point, because I think that there's got to be a huge difference between somebody that has maybe, you know, made the top 10, top 5, sat at the top of the rankings like Matt did. You also helped Connor Coffin out. But the biggest difference seems like those people that have been crowned world champions, such as Tyler Wright, your approach might be a little different. What do you say?
For sure, yeah. And I think, yeah, I try and simplify everything and make everything as simple as possible, and just to enjoy it, like enjoy the whole journey and the process of what they're doing. I think a 12-month year on tour it can be long and draining, and I want them to get to the end of the year and go, like, you know, I'm excited for the off season, but I'm actually can't wait to keep going next year. Like, I don't want them to get to the end of the year and fall over the line and then kind of need to go into hibernation, because I just don't think that's healthy. So I try and find that balance of what the right amount of work is and the right amount of balance in just being happy and healthy and enjoying what you're doing. And I think that translates to their best performance. I think if you're just redlining the whole way, you can find your moments where you know, working harder is detrimental at some point, and I feel like you have your peaks, but at some point you start to crash, and then you're mentally fatigued. So that was my approach, and it helped Tyler, and taking the pressure off everything of being about, if you don't win this title, you know, it's all a failure. I think putting that aside, that was a big one for Tyler. So once she was, you know, given the freedom to relax and go and be her and surf, and, you know, if we can rate your performance on effort and how well you showed up and how well you had a crack, then we can high five at the end and move on to the next one. And I feel like that just put her at ease to go and give it a good swing and enjoy the whole journey, rather than just kind of sweating on every event, every result. And yeah, our journey the first couple of years was incredible. It was amazing.
Yeah, 16, 17 consecutive back-to-back world championships. And would you say that you share the same kind of satisfaction and pleasure of them winning or their poor results just as you did?
Yeah, I don't get too emotionally attached to results. Like, I really found the small wins of just seeing them, like the few little changes that you made in their surfing or in their approach, like seeing those kind of come and shine through. I got a real kick out of those little things, like some of the positional things in the heat or the technique side, or just in their personal life, just seeing them do well. I get a real kick out of that just as much as seeing the results. And yeah, I always said, if we get to the end of the year and everyone's happy and healthy and their relationships are good, and then the result goals stack up next to that, then that's an incredible year. So it's like, I don't put all the focus on the results, and yeah, I'm not super attached to it. Like, if they're stoked, I'm stoked. That's the point for me.
Well, with that being said, we have a couple of questions from a couple of listeners worldwide. We have one from Omar Holtzen from Boomerang Beach. He's asking, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give him from going into Grom contest to some bigger events?
I actually watched Omar surf last weekend.
Hey Micro, it's Omar here. I've been competing in a couple of Grom contests lately, and I'm wondering how to gain the confidence to surf in heats like I free surf. Thanks.
Yeah. What a legend. He's a good kid. I actually saw him surf last week in the Grom comp in Curl. And I used to surf with his dad. But it's a good question. It's ironically nearly every parent asks me the same question. But I think the biggest thing is to really try and like we just spoke about is just relieve the pressure for that result. Like if you're having a free surf, there isn't a pressure on getting a certain result. You surf and you feel natural and you feel relaxed, and then if you go into an event, if your only measure of success is what your result is in this event, then you kind of instantly tense up and you're instantly stressed, and there's no doubt that you're going all the way to this event and you want to do well and you want to win. But putting that aside and going, all right, what am I going to be proud of myself of? If I, in free surf in the morning, go out and try my best and give 100% and work on my positioning, make sure I've got my landmarks, or give yourself some tangible goals that you want to be proud of, and then put the result aside. And at the end of it, if you get first or last, if you can look yourself in the mirror and go, those goals, I really made a good effort at those, then you can be proud of yourself either way. And I feel like that, and there's no denying you want to win. That's why you go in these things, but not making that your reason for being there and not that your main focus. So it's a tough one. And if you don't really understand that, it's not about just not caring about winning. It's more so caring about something that you can actually go out there and try and control, because the result at the end of the day is like, let's just make that the side project and see how you go. And the big one about it is who you're around and everyone at the event is talking about first, second, third, fourth, like the commentators, the sponsors, the photographers, the parents, the coaches. So trying to put all that aside and just go, right, what am I going to be proud of myself of? And if it's going out there and putting myself in position and trying my best and coming in going realistically, you guys are surfing 15 and 20-minute heats. They're pretty short, so the expectation can be so high for something that's so unrealistic. And just the other day with some Groms, I did a thing. I said, write down what you think a mistake is in a heat, and there was a list of about 50 things. And I was like, how often do you do most of those things in a heat? And they're like, probably every heat. So it's like, if you go out there thinking no mistakes, that's already unrealistic, because you're probably going to miss a wave. You're probably going to be just out of position for one. You're probably going to let one go that you probably should have gone. It's not like you're going out there to do that, but be real in the thought of, those things are likely to happen. So don't beat yourself up as soon as they start to happen, and keep moving on. If you miss one, you've missed it. Move on to the next one and keep checking where you are in the lineup and positioning yourself your best you can. And you surf your wave, you might fall at the end, and you obviously didn't plan to fall off, but if you have, get back on, paddle back out and figure out what your next move is. And I think the title of mistakes in surfing is so big, and it kind of is an unrealistic target for kids, because it's like, if you could strip back what you call a mistake, it's just, I think that'd be helpful.
Even adults have difficulties adjusting to the judging criteria and even understanding it. What are the most common questions you get from understanding the judging from kids?
Yeah, I think the judging for kids is just really understanding and believing that you can get a score in your way. I think when you go to an event and there's 1,000 different types of surfing going on, don't think that you've got to get a 9 the way the kid in the heat before you got a 9. You can do your version, and the judges want to score things that they're impressed with. So it's like if you just do big, kind of strong, powerful turns and the next kid does an air reverse, like they're both impressive. So don't feel like you've got to do what everyone else is doing to get their scores. You do you, and you've got your own version, and the small technical details that you probably think they're looking at, I can almost guarantee that you can strip them back and just go and do you as best you can, and where your left finger is pointing, they're not looking at it. Don't worry about it. Just go and relax and surf and put in your best kind of most proud performance, and you can get your scores.
I like that piece of advice right there. And next up, we have another question from Agrom. This is from Snow Wolf.
What would you do for training on duck diving and cutbacks for a kid like me that's 47 pounds?
That's all time. That's so good. What's 47 pounds in kilos? It's not much, is it?
Oh, man, it's got to be 20 kilos maybe.
I love it. It's like my kids. That's a good question, though, because it's such a... Like, my kids surf, and they're not much different weight to Snow. So it's... I think getting on if possible, getting on a really, really small board that's under volume and practicing duck. It's like what you used to do in the pool on a bodyboard, but a bodyboard's like that awkward shape. So if you can get a real mini little surfboard, because the technique of getting the push with the hands and then with the knee or the foot to get the flow of going down and up, I think if you can kind of do that in a pool with a real small board, you kind of get the feel of the flow, and then obviously transitioning that into a board that's just big enough to be able to catch waves on, but still duck dive. It's a hard one because, yeah, all the kids around here are like, oh, what size board should I get? And it's like, it's almost two different questions. Do you want to be able to duck dive or do you want to be able to catch waves? It's like you kind of, at your weight, there's no kind of perfect answer for that. And that's, my daughter, she randomly got obsessed with duck dive, and she'd sit in the pool and duck dive for 3 hours straight on this little mini board. But she'd go on her board and she could duck dive, but she couldn't duck dive her board because it was too big. I'm like, it's not you, it's just the physical barrier of your weight and that board. So that's my advice on duck diving would be try and get a real small board and get the gist of doing it in a pool, and then eat your breakfast and put on some weight, because there's nothing you can do. You just got to be patient. But, cutbacks, I think just getting low and getting out in the face, get real low, and trying to find those waves that have a real open green face so you can kind of practice getting low and then rotating your arm.
Okay. Snow had such a good question for you that she has another one too here, Micro, all right?
Yes.
My dream is to make it to the Olympics. So, Coach Micro, I have one question for you. One day, can you coach me?
Yes, I would absolutely love to. That'd be amazing. Let's do it. I would love to see you make the Olympics. Snow. That'd be, wow. Where would they be by then? They could be anywhere. They could be in a wave pool. They could be anywhere in the world by the time you make the Olympics. So sign me up. I'm in.
Well, thanks for your time, Micro. Appreciate it. I have one last big question for you right now before you get finished. I did the qualifying series myself, struggled finding a main sponsor. I know you had difficulties having, those finances be kept up with. What kind of financial advice would you give as priority number one for surfers in the next 6 to 12 months wanting to pursue the QS?
Yeah, I think I'd say number one, just back yourself and be prepared to fund yourself. I think, ideally you get, enthroned the sponsor dollars, and it's that you hope that comes along. But I think the reality is if you kind of show that you're willing to put the work in and put the effort in, and if you're only sitting around waiting for the sponsorship and it doesn't come, you've kind of lost the opportunity. So it doesn't really solve the question about how to get sponsored, but I think if you've got the desire to go hit the QS and give it a go, don't just sit and wait for it to happen. These days it's likely that, and there's not enough dollars in the industry for everyone to be given that bone. So I don't like that. It's so disappointing to see all these amazing talents not get the chance to go and do what they want to do. But I do think, in the same breath, if you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. Like my whole career, I was doing jobs in between events and digging holes, and each event I went to, I paid my own way basically. So you can make it happen if you want to. So I think don't just sit around waiting to be given the golden ticket.
I'm just going to drop a name right now who finished number 10 in the world in his rookie year, by the way. Callum Robson, second place finish at Bell's. I mean, you talk about impressive without a main sponsor, and this kid's doing it right now, Glenn.
100%. I was thinking of him when I was talking then. I totally agree. And it's like the Brazilians, like they do get some financial support along the way, but there's a lot of those QS guys who are they're making it happen on their own. You could take the dollars off them and they'll still find their way there. So I think that makes up for something when it comes to an event and how hard you try and how much it's like I said, when I was at these events and I'd had my wife and kid and I'd spend all that money to be there that I'd worked for, there's just something about you that just doesn't give up. So it answers for something when it comes to those big moments too. You want it. So you just want to make the most of being proud of yourself that you gave it your all. So, if you go and work hard and pay for the airline ticket to get somewhere, you're going to give it a crack.
And you're an avid golfer too. Should we expect a career in professional golf from you?
Definitely not. I absolutely love golf, but I'm definitely not going to be professional. But I do think it's something. There's something in golf that's good for surfers to have as a hobby to travel the world and and hit the off switch and go and play some golf. Molly Pickles has gotten right into it, and it's been incredibly helpful for her career.
Why do you think the Brazilians don't play golf, though?
I think they play soccer. I think that's their thing. I think they they all go off to the park and play soccer. But I just think it's just along the same lines of having something that's not at the beach, it's not looking at the waves, it's switching off and have another sport to follow or another passion to go and daydream about and wish you could do really well. And I just really think when you're on the road, having something that when it's dead flat, you're not just basically looking at the watch, counting the hours down for the day to end, for the next day to start. You're excited to go and play soccer or golf or tennis or something that just kind of, gives you a kick for the day, and it doesn't have to be revolved around surfing.
All right. Positive reinforcement almost.
Yeah, for sure. And just putting the boards away for a few hours, it's a good thing.
Hey, Michael, we appreciate your time and hope to have you back on the pod again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Glenn Micro Hall, everybody.
Take the heat!
This has been a Live Heats production. Make sure you subscribe and follow Live Heats, and we'll see you next time for Take the Heat.